Hey everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to get started and set up with C++ in your Visual Studio Code editor. So just a heads up, things will be slightly different when it comes to your operating system. I'm using a Mac, which will be using G++. So if you're not using G++ or settings might be a little different, just take note of that. But if you are using a Mac or possibly Linux, the steps should more or less be the same. And although I don't know for sure, I don't know if Windows will be different because I personally do not use Windows. So you'll notice that I do have my Visual Studio Code editor open. I do have a new directory, but I don't have any project files as of yet. So what I want to do is first I want to install an appropriate extension. And then after I install that extension, we're going to see how to create our build configuration file and things like that. So go ahead and open up your extensions. So you can go View, you can go Extensions, or you can hit the shortcode. But what we want to do is we want to type in C++ and we want to install a certain extension. So go ahead and click on hopefully the first one, the one by Microsoft, and click Install. So that is half the battle right there. We will want to do some other setup as well, but let's go ahead and close that now that it's installed. So go ahead and go back into your Explorer, and you could actually go View Explore or use the shortcut. It's up to you. And let's go ahead and open up our terminal as well. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to create a new C++ file. We're going to start there. So I'm going to say touch. I'm going to say main.cpp. And that will create a new C++ file in our project, hopefully. If it doesn't, go ahead and create one manually. And this will contain nothing as of yet. And that's fine. So we're just going to do a very basic C++ file, and then we're going to look at further setting up our Visual Studio Code editor. So I'm just going to say include. I'm going to say IO stream. I'm going to say using namespace std, and I'm going to say int main, and I'm going to say let's go ahead and say cout hello world. And I'm going to say return 0. So this is a very basic C++ project. But how exactly do you run it from Visual Studio Code? I mean, I could just do G++ inside of my terminal here, but there might be better ways. So for one, if you went up into your navigation for Visual Studio Code, you can go ahead and configure a new default build task. And let's go ahead and create a tasks.json file. And let's go ahead and use, let's go ahead and try others. So this is just going to create a JSON file. It's going to create it, if I save it, it's going to create it as a hidden project directory within our project. It's not showing up in my Explorer. It may show up in yours. Everyone's setup is a little different. So what I'm going to do is I am going to modify this a bit, because if I wanted to run it, let's go ahead and say run task. This task is called echo because of the label. I'm going to run it. Let's go ahead and continue without scanning the task output. And you can see it says hello, not because that's what we put in our C++ file, but that's because that's what the task says for the command. So let's go ahead and make some changes. Let's go ahead and make it so that way it's more appropriate for us. So I'm going to change the label to build. I'm going to change the type, it's going to leave the type as shell. The command though is going to be a little different. It's going to be G++ for me because that's what's on Mac. I'm also going to have command line arguments, and that's going to be in the form of an array. The first argument is going to be the file that I want to build, which is going to be main.cpp. And if I wanted to, I could leave it at that. What it's going to do is it's just going to create an output file. So let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to say terminal. I'm going to say run task. I'm going to say build. I'm just going to say never scan the task output. And you can see that it created an a.out file. So that's part of the battle. Now what about if we wanted to run it? Or what if we wanted to name it something other than a? So what I could do is I could further specify other command line arguments. For example, I could include the -o for output. And I can specify an output name. So I can specify something .out if I wanted to. But actually, I think it makes more sense to use the name of the actual working directory. So I could use a variable for that. I could use $ curly bracket workspace folder base name. And let's go ahead and try to run it again. So I'm going to run it. I'm going to say run task. I'm going to say build. And this time around, it created a CPP project because that's actually my directory name, but that's a binary right there. So let's go a little further. Let's go ahead and create another task. Let's go ahead and do comma because this is just simple JSON. We're going to say, let's go ahead and say label is going to be run. The type is going to be shell. The command this time around, we're actually going to run that output file, which is the CPP project file. So I'm going to say in my relative path, my actual current directory, and I'm going to use the same variable again. So workspace folder base name. But there is more to this. So this is our command, but we can't necessarily run this run command until we know that our binary is built. So we're going to have a dependency here. So we're going to say depends on, and this particular label, so this particular task depends on the build task, so the build label. And if I save that and I go to terminal and I go to run task, I can say run. Let's just go ahead and say never scan the task output. It builds it and then it runs it. So it actually ran it in my terminal, which is quite nice. So for example, if I wanted to, I can just say if I wanted to, I could run it manually. I can say CPP project does the same thing, hello world, but essentially that task is just first running this build. So it's running this build command, and then afterwards it's just running exactly what I ran in the terminal just now. So this is pretty convenient. You could add other build tasks. It's not specific to C++ projects, but at least now you can see that, hey, you don't have to install some big, heavy, clunky IDE in order to run your C++ projects. You can just create this simple build tasks file, and then you can code your C++ file as you normally would in any other editor. So it's very lightweight in my opinion.